And it's recording. There we go. Okay, so thanks for jumping on. We really appreciate it. We know that time is valuable, especially as things are starting to come together and spring is here. So we wanted to take today and kind of talk to you about Salesforce's CPQ tool and how it can work for manufacturers. We've got a brief kind of introduction and overview of what CPQ is. And then we're going to introduce a client of ours, InCord. Nikki's right there front and center in the tiles, who's going to kind of walk us through the process that they went through, kind of the challenges they were looking to address, the way that they addressed those. And then we're going to walk you through some screen share about some of the ways that InCord specifically, but I think it's not going to be perfectly applicable to everybody, but it will certainly rhyme, right, with how you guys can start to use CPQ if this is something, if advanced quoting is something that you guys need to kind of think about. Salesforce CPQ is a remarkable tool to do that. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera because I've noticed when Peter and I were doing this, there was a little latency and a little buzziness, and it seems like when the camera's not taking up space, it goes a little smoother. So I'll turn it back on at the end, but I want to have it off for this so that we can kind of get the best quality, at least kind of from the auditory side as we possibly can. Okay, so an agenda to kind of get through. We'll do introductions right now, actually, and then we'll jump from here into the sessions. We've got a session about the overview of CPQ, about our InCord success story, and then open questions from everybody. You'll be approaching 3 people from the InCord side: Nikki, who you saw on camera, Jillian, and Bob, who are both on, I think, based on the initials. So, as we walk through here, these are the 3 people that kind of managed, implemented, deployed, rolled out, refined, probably on a daily or weekly basis, the Salesforce CPQ install at InCord, and they can certainly answer any of the questions that you guys have. My name is Dan Corbett. I'm the founder and managing partner of BlackIron. My partner in crime, Peter Anderson, that with the art studio in the back there, is going to take us through the first couple of slides. Peter and I have known each other for, Peter, 25 years, something like that. It's been a ridiculous amount of time. So
yeah, long time.
We go way back. So I'm going to turn it over to Peter to kind of take you through a couple of slides, and we'll pick you up on the other side with InCord.
Okay. So as we try to make this short, but a shameless plug. So I mean, just in case there are some people that maybe are new to BlackIron or haven't worked with us before, we've been around, as Dan said. Dan and I have known each other from previous jobs and previous lifetimes. Since 2007. In that time, we've done 1,600 projects. We're over 1,600 customers. We have 2,000 projects, multiple projects per customer sometimes. We've gotten really good at doing project management. And I think that we're really good at translating what people's business needs into something that's a usable Salesforce instance. That's why we've been successful, and we keep being able to do that. We're local to the Northeast, although we now have a kind of a pod out in the Midwest. We have 2 guys, and we're expanding in Iowa. We have two folks that we brought over from Nationwide Insurance, where they worked on a big Salesforce team there. So that's who we are, what we do. The thing that that's really not on here is in the last 2 years, we've really kind of focused more on manufacturing and manufacturers, because Dan and I both come from manufacturing systems backgrounds and actual manufacturing. So that's been more of a focus. We still do some other stuff, but this is the second session in what we're going to do once a month, typically mostly for manufacturers, to talk about ideas and products and things that you could do with Salesforce, and really not in a salesy attitude, but just, hey, these are things you might be able to do or you should know about and think about. So with that, what we're talking about today is CPQ and why you should consider CPQ. CPQ is, Salesforce bought it a couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago now, 5 years ago. It used to be called SteelBrick. It's a very specific niche product for people that have really complex quoting requirements. Things like configurations, think of telecom, or just a product that has lots of things you can configure, lots of permutations, lots of that's difficult. And need a way to rationalize that and make it work. We believe that Salesforce CPQ, particularly if you have Salesforce, is a no-brainer. But it really is one of the best, if not the best, CPQ products on the market. It's just it's well put together, or it's tested. It's been around for a long time, and both Dan and I in our previous lives have used other tools, and just everything has gotten much better. So we're a big believer. We've invested in it in terms of getting our guys trained so we could do it. One of the main things with CPQ is it supports sales, service, subscriptions. It's all in one place, and again, it's all part of Salesforce, so it's seamlessly connected to it. So it's one more thing, it's one less silo that you have to have. It really helps your sales reps configure and structure deals. You can help them with guided selling so they don't forget things or don't sell things that they shouldn't be selling. It also helps greatly because it can help from people if they're on the road. Pre-COVID, people were on the road, but where you might need to do quotes. And as our guests will tell you, they're doing 40 or so quotes a day. So if you have a lot of quotes and they're complex, CPQ is a real godsend. It's also set up really well so that admins can change things, because as you add products with some systems, it would be really cumbersome to put new products in to set it all up. It's set up so that it's reasonably efficient in doing that. Streamline your repeat business by defining certain price books, inheriting pricing from previous quotes. And again, it keeps everything all in one spot so you don't have to go looking for it. You can get rid of price discrepancies between quotes, orders, and invoices. And again, it's one system, so it's one source of truth. So it's something that everybody can use, as opposed to a lot of people before they have CPQ, maybe you're doing it in spreadsheets or some other tool, and the numbers don't always match up with sales and quotes and all that kind of stuff. CPQ customers, these are Salesforce numbers, but I think we've seen similar things. A 19% increase in upsells because you can build that upsell process in, so you can, if you're selling this product, mention that product. 33% faster quote generation. I think in some cases it's even more. We've had customers that it took for 2 hours, 3 hours, sometimes a day because of approvals or different things, and they can really get that done fast, quickly, and efficiently with a tool like CPQ. 38% error reduction. This is really huge because it doesn't, as I said, let you sell things you shouldn't sell with this product, or do certain things or price certain things a certain way. It really lets you build a really good set of rules and business rules around your process. And 25% increased sales productivity. Again, I think in some cases it's more, because if say your sales guys have to do a quote and it takes them an hour to do or an hour and a half to do, and all of a sudden they can do it in 20 minutes or less, it makes it's a huge thing. So overall, I think most people, when they see CPQ, they either, if they need it, they get it. And so it's not a product for everybody. So everybody doesn't have complex quoting needs, but a lot of people do. And what we wanted to show you today was one instance of how it's being used with a customer of ours along with Salesforce. So Dan, I'll hand it over to you for the next slide.
Excellent. So, and thanks, Peter. So I wanted to introduce you to InCord. Nikki, Jillian, and Bob from InCord. InCord meet everybody. Everybody meet InCord. And I thought maybe we could take some time to kind of walk through the CPQ piece. But first, I wanted to introduce you to them. And I'm going to butcher this, Nikki, so I'm going to let you guys kind of jump in and do this. But essentially, from a manufacturing perspective, germane to kind of some of the customers and prospects on the phone, InCord makes safety nets that basically help customers do material handling that will help you in construction and safety, and in various kind of specialty pieces you see from some of the pictures to basically capture falling debris or falling people, I'm guessing, Nikki, as we kind of go through this. So I'm going to turn this over and let them kind of talk about this so I don't make a fool of myself anymore.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dan. So Part of what InCord does is we're the leading supplier of custom netting solutions in North America. We, as Dan had said, we have 8 different divisions, and as you can imagine, all the different divisions have extremely different quoting needs. Sometimes we're talking about bids, sometimes we're talking about homeowners looking for something for their backyard. So every one of our divisions has a different salesman with different requirements. And that was one of our biggest challenges when we came into the market for a CRM system, was trying to find something that would fit every salesperson in every market that we have.
So I'm going to jump to the next slide here.
Okay.
So this is kind of a screen where we talk about sort of some of the challenges InCord had as they put this together. We built this list of bullets, but I mean, I think it's fairly common stuff that you hear from a lot of customers, right? Spreadsheets, basically, to manage this stuff. No real way to track. You send a quote out to the ether, and then, where is it and what's happening to it? No real way to kind of understand some of the data about who's kicking tires and who's signing. And the sales team couldn't basically do this from the road. So Nikki and Jillian, do you guys kind of want to talk to us? And probably Bob too, because you were actively involved in this. What kind of issues you had with the tool you guys built?
Sure. So I would say that one of the biggest issues that we had to do with what kind of reporting we were able to necessarily get out of it. Our senior managers wanted to see very specific things per division, and we were having some challenges with that. And Jillian, I know you're on the call here. I'm going to hand it over to you. Jillian's actually on the team that helped to build the other reporting tool that we had used. So.
Yeah, we encountered numerous issues aside from obviously trying to start to build a thing from the ground up. It's really hard to try and understand exactly what we need. Our approach was kind of to recreate what we had, which in and of itself is a bit of a problem. We kind of ran into a lot of issues with the logic behind all this stuff. One of the things that we found a big help with Salesforce was that a lot of the stuff was already there. We just had to tweak things. One of the big things that we didn't have was, like you said, all the reporting. We didn't have any of that kind of stuff on our end. We didn't have any way to track where stuff was going, whether or not any of these things were being closed out, how old these quotes were. It was just sitting in there. So, it's a lot easier to track all the stuff, see who's doing what. You can go in there and see what divisions are being used the most, which ones are kind of just sitting there doing nothing for a while.
Right. And Salesforce and CPQ give us amazing reporting abilities. So if we feel the need for a new report, Bob, who's on the call as well, can go in and create the new report and tweak it however our senior managers need in order to view the data.
Yeah, and I mean, the possibilities with the reports are pretty much endless. Anything that we have in the system, we can report on. I mean, stuff that we've made in there it's incredible what we can create.
Right.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to roll to the next one. So the next one is kind of, what we did to kind of get to the next level. So, CPQ by definition is a Salesforce product. That means it's cloud-based. So getting to that data is not VPN into a system. It's not running on a server that's sitting in a room someplace and sort of we're pipe bound. Basically, once it's there, we can make that happen quickly. To everybody's point, visibility into those quotes, understanding what was there, and then using CRM. After you develop a quote, you've accomplished half the battle. The other half is getting the customer to basically sign up, or at least tell you to go away. And Salesforce basic CRM can kind of help us get to that point. Just block and tackle, sort of. It's been 3 days. Here's a report of the quotes. Let's call them and see what's going on. And then finally, and I know Nikki and Jillian want to talk about this. Avalara is a tax management tool. I imagine everybody knows that. But there's a bolt-on, an app exchange module that allows you to bolt Avalara onto Salesforce CPQ quoting and do all of the different kind of tax calculations for cities and states and the exemptions, which I didn't understand was such a big deal. But as Nikki and Jillian were kind of talking to us, it's a huge kind of undertaking to understand who has to pay tax and who doesn't. And having that kind of built in helped us a lot, sort of get that. One of the things for the speed was basically putting that together. So,
Exactly. And what we find too is if a customer gets a quote with sales tax on it and they know that they're exempt in a certain location, they typically send back their exemption before they place their order, which is huge because we're not issuing sales tax credits and all of that good stuff. So we have sales tax liability, I believe, in 36 different states. Each one has a different filing. Some are quarterly, some are yearly, some are monthly. And in those states, different different cities have different tax rates amongst the different states. So the sales tax management piece is, quite frankly, probably about I would say we could probably hire 3 people to manage that. But the fact that Salesforce has the ability to add on to Avalara, which is a program we're already using, it eliminated the need for us to have to hire so many people. And when you're talking about tax individuals, you're talking about pretty high salaries and experts in their field. So, it definitely alleviated the need for some high-end salaries.
One bullet on here so the last time's webinar was about integration, right? We talked about a bunch of different methods to get there. InCord uses Sage 300. Do I have that right, Nikki? Sage 300 or 500?
So Sage 100.
100, okay. And they all kind of run together. But essentially taking that data, one of the other things and it's for another topic and another time, but one of the things that InCord wanted to do was keep the quoting and sort of the prospecting piece happening in Salesforce. And only if and when it became a proper order, do we sort of, put it into ERP. And in that way, we didn't have all this junk out there in Sage that was never going to go anywhere. I don't mean that the way it sounds, but I mean, people lose quotes. None of that stuff had to be in the ERP. And what was in the ERP became sales orders. And that data kind of kept the inventory control and the accounting piece and all that kind of stuff happening kind of, seamlessly, basically over in Sage.
Right. So the BlackIron group had worked with a program that we'd found with them through, I believe the program was through MBA Systems or a company like that. And they built a custom link for us so that we could push an order from Salesforce over to Sage, which is huge. So our ERP software is clean data. It's either our backlog or our invoice sales. And anything in our ERP system typically requires inventory and purchasing to do something with it. If we need to buy products or whatever we need to do, once it's in Sage, that's our team's cue to do something with it.
Excellent. All right. So I'm going to jump into kind of what CPQ can look like. And again, this is just one version, one example of what it can look like. But, this kind of work can be done for anybody, basically. Salesforce is ultimately configurable. CPQ is ultimately configurable. We just have to figure out what the requirements are for you and then kind of put that together and build it out. One of the things we did for InCord right out of the box, and I think Jillian and Ken was the guy on our team that did the project, we're super kind of focused on doing was to make sure that we reduce the number of clicks to get the sales reps. Getting the sales reps kind of doing this, Peter said earlier, they're doing 40 quotes. Is it 40 quotes a week or 40 quotes a day?
Usually roughly a day.
A day. So, I mean, there's not a whole lot of time to sort of think and evaluate and work through it. So one of the things that we wanted to do, and I think this was kind of phase 1.5, but after we got our act together on the quotes, is we wanted to build a screen, the one that you see in front of you, that allows you basically to create a quote from one screen. So in this screen, it's custom code, but it was a way to basically say, tell me who the account is, tell me what the address is, tell me who the market is, and tell me what the opportunity name is, and then click go. And when you did that, it created, if it didn't exist, it created the account, it created the opportunity, it made sure that the addresses were right, it associated the market so we knew which items to see on the screen, and it gave us the payment terms so that we got to the edit quote piece over here, right at the line items. We basically had everything sort of put together for us. And that helped get the user base kind of, I don't know, it eased into adoption because it just made things a lot quicker, right? I mean, Nikki, Jillian, we kind of talk about do you know what I'm saying? It was like we wanted to make sure that everybody had the least amount of clicks because that got the most amount of acceptance.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously the way that Salesforce was originally set up is great for when you're, you know, in a lot of businesses, it works that way when you want to go through and really put in all the information, have it nice and clean from the start. With our salespeople, they like to go back afterwards when they're sitting in their hotel room afterwards and clean up all the information and put in all that stuff. But for them, they like to have it where they just get the quote out in the office when they're sitting there with the customer and they go back afterwards. So that was a perfect way to clean it up and get it just that quick. Hit new quote, get it all through right then and there, and then afterwards they could go through. It was a perfect modification and get it down to just a quick process. They could get in, get to edit lines, put all the stuff together, and get out a proposal to them.
Cool. Okay. And then once you were kind of in there using Salesforce customization, which I imagine everybody's sort of familiar with, but then kind of helping on the other side, we could take the data either at the line item level or the account level or the opportunity level, and use that information to seed, S-E-E-D, seed the quote itself. So in this example, you'll kind of see that after we build out a quote, we have information subtotaling from the line items. You can probably see that over here. You've got some weight data that's coming from the items as well, sort of rolling up. All this information that we blacked out the addresses, but you know, all the bill to and the ship to information kind of comes loading in for us. Basically, take information that you're going to be putting in other places and then rolling that up to either the quote or the opportunity, or rolling down from the account to the quote. Was a real kind of, you know, simple. It was a configuration kind of issue in Salesforce, not necessarily coding, right? So this is base Salesforce / CPQ configuration to put together. The other thing that would happen is if we pick the right division, we would be presented with the products that belong to that division. So we weren't fishing through a ton of sort of ancillary, not unimportant, but needed products for this particular quote, right? We would boil it down to just the stuff that we were interested in keeping, and you kind of see that listed here on this screen. I probably did a bad job of explaining that, Jillian, but I mean,
yeah, I mean, I can add to that. It's probably not too easy to see in the screenshot, but if you can see above all that line item detail, there's a couple buttons up top. Initially in Salesforce, it was pretty much just products. You would hit that and you'd see all your products. We broke it down into categories for how it would work for us, which was in our case, netting, hardware, and samples. And then within that netting dropdown, you could select the division and it would be broken down into only what you use for your division. Or if you needed to see everything, you could go to the full list and select stuff outside of your division. It made it a lot easier to not have to search through a massive list. It definitely made it a little bit faster for people to be able to look through, find just what they need, but in the event that they actually needed to do something outside their division for really weird customized orders, they could still access that other stuff. So it's a lot faster process.
Right. I think I actually did a picture of that. Nope, it's not here. I know I have a picture of that, but I can show that here in a second. I should have kind of put that together. The other thing that exists kind of inside, and this is all configuration, again, base configuration in CPQ, is that on the edit quote line item screen, you have the ability to then customize that product. So you're not leaving this going into an individual project and back clicking, going into another project and back clicking. Basically, you're working from within this sort of matrix of the items and configuring that to get the price to work, right? So if we pick the border has a price rule associated with it. If we pick the color, I don't think the color has a price, but if we pick the length or we pick any of the add-ons that go with that, the combination of those items help us to figure out what the price is going to be for this product. And you do it basically on a single screen. You're not jumping back and forth to kind of make that happen. If you're doing 30 or 40 quotes a day, then you know what I mean? That this becomes, having speed to be able to do this becomes super important. There we go. Okay, here, yes. So Jillian, here's that was what you were talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So, and what she was saying, I want her to talk to me about how we put this together, but essentially netting hardware samples are kind of the big three. From there, then you've got the 8 divisions, right? Kind of listed below where users sort of pick that off. So to kind of make this happen, we would just list the items that were associated with bayonets, or we would just list the items that were related to amusement, essentially kind of shrinking the product list based on what we were doing. And then we've got these override buttons here. So remember when Peter said that the pricing was very fixed, so we weren't going to have all these mistakes where somebody gave a 1,000% discount. Essentially, and we do have that locked in based on the pricing rules and how it works. But if you need, for whatever reason, to override that, and you've got the permission set in Salesforce, you can click these override buttons and change those prices. So do you guys want to kind of talk about why we did that, and what kind of use case comes about for it?
I'll probably let Nikki speak to that one. I think you know a little bit more about sales and when they use that kind of stuff.
Sure. So the price override became important because we have different levels of customers. So the end user may get charged a little bit differently than a distributor who would need a competitive price in order to bid or quote on the job. So that's why the override became so important, is so that we were able to accommodate our distributor pricing. And then Dan, what was the other thing in there that you were talking about?
Kind of how we picked these items based on the kind of segregation, right? So
Sure.
we could limit or expand the product.
Perfect examples. We have the sports division, right? And in there we have things like soccer goal nets, right? So we wouldn't want our material handling guy to have to go through and weed through all the different soccer goal nets or the batting cage nets or anything like that. So that was also the importance of breaking it out by the division, is minimal clicks. Again, going back to that was a big thing for the sales team, and simplicity of finding the items that they needed to find.
Great. And then finally, I put this page up here for favorites. One of the other things that you can do is if you take time and care and patience to build out a fairly sophisticated quote, you can save that as a favorite. You can publish that to everybody, or you can just keep it personal for yourself. And then the next time that a customer calls about a particular material handling net or a particular construction net, you could have that favorite basically built either just for yourself because you're used to doing it for whoever the client is, or to share with everybody else. And then once they pick that, the quote basically generates based on everything, the items, the pricing rules. All of that data kind of comes up. The only difference then obviously is the account that you chose to get there. And once you've got it, you've got the ability to kind of modify that if you want to. But it's a really cool way, especially for clients that are building, in Peter's example for telecom, some of those things are crazy complicated, and putting them together is not an easy feat. Once it's done, you can have a favorite, sort of put that together, and then have it out there for future use.
Great.
Okay. Last thing, once you've sort of put the quote together, you're exactly halfway there. Once we sort of configured the products, we can then build out a quote again in a single click. Now you can see that they've got a couple of different examples. So you can have different templates for different purposes, for different divisions if you want to, right? If we've got different kind of T's and C's and that kind of information. If you've got spec sheets that kind of come along for the ride as PDFs, that information can kind of find its way in automatically. It'll integrate to e-signature, and obviously, as we talked earlier, it'll integrate to Avalara to do the taxes as well. This is an InCord example for a fake customer that I put together, but I still wiped off the address. But as you can kind of see here, I've got descriptions of what was going on, and then I've got the items themselves with the unit and the extended price kind of rolling over here. This is just an example. This can be a lot more sophisticated or a lot more complicated or a lot more simple, kind of depending on what you guys want to do. And Nikki and Julian, we have a couple of different templates, right? So proposal looks a lot different than a quote, looks a lot different than is that right?
We do. We also have different ones based on division because we have different logos for certain divisions.
Excellent. Cool. Okay. And the last one, this is probably where Bob's going to jump in and start to talk about reporting. As you heard a couple of times, one of InCord's biggest beefs with their old system was the lack of ability to report. And to be fair, the system was basically built to turn out a quote, right? It turned out a quote and then threw it into the ether, and everybody sort of had to figure out what was going on beyond that. But with Salesforce, we've got the CRM component behind that. So the quote is the beginning, not the end. And so, with Bob's help, who's kind of understands all the data and how the data sort of rolls around inside of Salesforce and CPQ, they could build out various reports. And I think this is true, Bob. You guys built a series of reports kind of in the beginning of the project. And then over time, I mean, if you look at the report list in the system, there's probably 100 reports now kind of put together, and some of them are one-offs, but a lot of them are kind of consistently used. Is that close to right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
What kind of stuff was management looking for in terms of reports?
So there were some reports I built just on quotes opportunities older than say 45 days, so that our sales reps could follow up. I've got reports built for some material in case some of the data match up in stage and how much we were expecting we need to start ordering from our suppliers.
So is that like production forecasting?
Yeah, it's some production forecasting.
I thought this one was cool. That's why I took the picture. Basically, InCord wanted to see, what the correlation was between quotes and then orders as it sort of goes over the top. And you can see they sawtooth. Maybe they're a little off from the sawtooth, but there's definitely a correlation, right? This one maybe not so much, but every time you see an increase in quotes, you see an increase in orders after that. So I thought this was a really interesting picture to kind of visually tell the team, hey, we've got doing all this quote is not necessarily a fool's errand. When we do it and we've got peaks in it, orders, eventually start to roll in.
Right. Bob has also built, and I don't mean to speak for Bob, but I know that he's built a lot of reports for our CEO in terms of just, who's quoted what in the timeline on the different quotes. I think the last time I went into the reports folder, Bob, I think you added like 20 reports in there in like the month,
Wow.
So it's just like, as we get more and more into it, we discover different things that we want to report on. And the reporting capability in this program is incredible.
Yeah, that actually sounds about right. I'm looking at it right now. I've created quite a few recently.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. All right. So, I mean, that's kind of the end of the formal stuff. We have no big finish. Bob was going to sing, but we talked him out of it. So
You're welcome.
For that.
So open it up to questions. Anybody have any questions for InCord or for us? All right, I'm going to start it then. So how did taxes get calculated before we did the Avalara thing, you guys? I'm just curious because I know it was a hassle, but it was, I just don't remember. Do you know what I'm asking? How did you sort of maintain that?
Yeah.
I think you talked about sales credits and stuff. It must have been a mess.
Yeah, we didn't maintain it on the quoting side at all. So what we found was a customer would send in a PO without sales tax on it. Our system, our ERP software would automatically charge the sales tax based on the location. And then a month later, they'd say, we're not paying the tax, issue me a credit for it. So our finance team, which, we only have a few people in our finance team, we spend probably a good day of time, 8 hours a month, just issuing sales tax credits to different people. So, so this eliminated the need to do that.
Second question on that, when the sales tax, so we do a quote, we win some, we lose some. The ones we win, does the sales tax find its way back to, I don't know this answer, I never asked Ken, does the sales tax find its way back to Sage so that calculation's already done there as well? So
Sage will recalc it. It will recalculate the sales tax at the time that we enter in the order.
Oh, in case anything changes. Okay. All right. one other question around the integration piece itself. And I don't know the answer to this. So we have quotes, we win some, we lose some. Do sales orders themselves out of Sage find their way back to Salesforce? In other words, do we have kind of this quote piece? I think we do. I think that's how the quotes versus orders calculation is done. Is that right? Is that how we're sort of putting that together?
So it's actually a one-way integration right now. It goes from Salesforce to Sage, but Bobby's reporting takes into account anything pushed from Salesforce over to Sage. That makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, that's how they're checking that it's in order, right? That's basically the cue that Bob says, all right, I'm going to compare these two. Okay.
Right.
Excellent. That's all I've got. Anybody else have any questions? Is there anything we can answer? Happy to jump in here and do what we can.
I think there's some questions in the chat.
Are there? Let me go and look and see how that works. I'm sorry to turn my head to the side here, but I'll. Question. Quotes come from Salesforce. How about invoices? Are they from Sage? And if they are, does Sage track the AR? That's from Randy.
Yes, so invoices are done through Sage, and we handle, once it becomes an order, essentially we handle it through the ERP software for inventory purposes, for manufacturing purposes, for any other purpose past the quoting. So Sage handles all of our AR, all of our sales order invoicing, all of that good stuff.
Cool. And then Kenneth is saying, do we have separate connections from Salesforce to Avalara and then Sage to Avalara? In other words, did the calculation get done twice?
Yes, so we do have it done twice, just because of the reason of sometimes sales tax rates change. For instance, like California sometimes in July may update it. So in order to maintain an accurate sales tax amount, we decided to have it recalculate once it got to Sage.
Does that answer those? Thank you. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're 6 minutes early. Like I said, I'll save this and I'll send it to everybody on this, and I'll send it to everybody who didn't show up on the invite as well, so that we've got copies of this and we can get it out to people. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this. Thanks so much to the InCord team for helping us put this together. And I'll do a shameless plug for them. If you guys are in the market for kind of safety nets in your facilities, InCord is the place to go. InCord.com. Did I do that right? So
yes.
Cool.
Thank you.
And yeah, so that's it. Thanks for coming. We appreciate it. Look for another one in a month, and we'll topic to be determined, but we'll get that out to you. So Peter, any last words?
No, no, thanks everybody. Actually, the next one, I think we might it also be on quoting, but we'll let you know. Hopefully these are informative, and if you guys have any recommendations or topics you'd like us to talk about, please do send it across, because we've got 3 or 4 ideas, but we can always use more.
That's a really good idea. All right. Thanks, everybody. Look for emails from me this afternoon. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.